Welcome, Justin Silverman, to the IndieMania pre-show. And we have some great interview questions we're going to go over with you today. And I read these questions before, and I got to say that it's very interesting. So I can't wait to actually hear your answers for all of these questions.
Sure.
So I'll kick it off. And your journey from NFL films, which again, that was surprising, to creating indie games with Screenwave Media is quite the leap. What sparked your transition from editing sports footage to diving into the wild world of indie game development?
Yeah, I mean, I went to school for 3D animation like 20 years ago, and while I was in school, I just fell more in love with doing film stuff and editing and that sort of, because I was always the guy in my crew when we were doing like Jackass style videos in high school where I'd be filming and editing and doing all that. So I wanted to, I guess keep doing that. I got an internship at NFL Films in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. I was at Rutgers in New Jersey, so close enough, and got that internship. They brought me on full time as an assistant editor, and then after the financial strains of the 2008-2009, they eventually let go of all their freelancer types and rearranged and stuff. So I pivoted to doing like graphic design stuff, but this whole time, I've known James Rolfe since film school. I was doing my own YouTube show on the side. I just kind of threw all my energy at the YouTube stuff, which led getting linked up with Screenwave Media, working there as, doing the MCN YouTube thing. And when they started doing games and eventually put Retroware together, and now I'm kind of in charge of the marketing and a lot of the creative stuff here, it was just kind of like 1, 2, 3. But I think some of the things I learned when working with the NFL and it being this big corporation and dealing with clients and things that we tend to deal with in this community and different events and stuff like that, it kind of works. I'm good never having to watch a football game again because, every Sunday I have to watch every single one or edit them or whatever. But during that time, I got to do some other stuff too. Like I edited a Jason Statham movie back then. NFL Films is more of a production house in it, because they need to do stuff when there's no football season. So I did a lot when I was there and learned a lot. And some of those things I still bring to this day because I still try and edit some of our YouTube content and try and keep sharp on that. Or when I was producing Cinemassacre and AVGN and stuff like that. So, it's been 20 years, but I guess I've jumped a few or 5 places. But, it's been a good time.
Right. So at Screenwave Media, of course, you wear many hats: creative director, producer, and even actor in projects like The Angry Video Game Nerd.
Yeah.
So what's the most unexpected skill you've picked up while juggling all of these roles?
Unexpected skill. I think most of my skills, even though I can edit and act kind of and produce and all these other things, I think mostly the soft skills and the people skills and making friends and all that kind of stuff and getting to all the events and being in the community for like 15, 20 years is probably the most important thing. I wouldn't say anything surprising, but I definitely work as much as possible. But I also don't really see it as work either. Like a few days ago, I was in Pittsburgh at Megacat Studios. They're helping us make the new AVGN game. And they said, how many hours do you work a day? I'm like, I don't really log them, but it's probably like a lot, but it's pretty stress-free and it's fun and entertaining for me. And most things, roll off my back anyway. So it's not too crazy, but I guess that's the other thing is just how you handle stress. And if you want to even call it that, is probably the most important skill you can have or learn, or what I brought into every project that I work on.
So your YouTube channels, Underbelly and Silvermania, they have a cult following for their quirky game content. What's the weirdest or most memorable fan interaction you've had that sort of sums up the vibe of your community?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I think Underbelly was it was on Screw Attack. It was on Normal Boots, which people forget, one of the first shows on there. We kind of we were shifted. We were on some of the first MCNs. We kind of pioneered a few things without realizing it. Like, we were the first show on YouTube ever in 1080p. we were doing like white screen and stuff that a lot of people couldn't do. We brought our kind of film and from NFL to school stuff into the YouTube angle, and they weren't really back when like uploading 1080 on YouTube was insane. Like we're talking like 2009, 2010. So a lot of that stuff, and even a lot of the fans from back then, from when I was doing more YouTuber content like Underbelly or more anti-YouTuber content, the more evil version with Silvermania. Like I still have fans that come up even at cons. Like I was just at SoCal Retro with the Retroware games in LA a few weeks ago, and some people only knew me from like Underbelly, and I thought that was crazy because I don't think we ever broke 60,000 subscribers, but we were on other networks and Screw Attack and things like that, and people remembered all that, and I always thought that was pretty cool, that people recognized me from that instead of like AVGN or what we're doing now with the retro games and stuff. But in terms of like quirky fan interactions, Silvermania is a type of show where we would like spin those, and I'm still friends with a lot of those guys and a lot of the people that were counterculture or a little weird or something. I always embraced, like, those are always my type of people in general. But nothing that really stands out that I could say publicly. So, kind of keep all that stuff under my hat. But we've had a lot of fun at conventions and a lot of weird drinking stories from the past and weird interactions for years and years and years that actually most of the things that I don't find weird, most would, because I'm so accustomed to it. But I'm glad to kind of have ground that out the last 10 years and by doing ABGN and doing conventions and running things. And I've always been more of a back-end producer guy, but it's cool that I have been front face on camera and all that stuff before.
That's awesome. Yeah, sounds like you have a lot of great stories. The best stories are the ones that you can't share publicly. So, indie game development is kind of like herding cats while riding a unicycle. It can be challenging, but very rewarding. Can you share a moment from a recent project where you felt like you nailed the creative vision?
I think the stuff that's not in the games comes out pretty cool when we do things like when we do our booth displays at conventions. At MagFest this year, we rebuilt the Angry Video Game Nerd set with the backdrop and with the fake games. And if you're sitting there and you take a photo, it looks like you're on the set. And in a few weeks, at not to date us, but at Too Many Games, we're going to have the whole set, and James will be signing autographs and taking photos on it. And we've used it for a few secret videos that are coming up with some big guests and things. So we'll see how that goes. So it was kind of cool taking something so iconic and putting it somewhere else. But I think a lot of, but in terms of nailing the creative vision, I think getting Iron Meat to where it was from where it started. Like, we put up some videos on the channel where it was in like 2017, 2018 to where we kind of brought it, and how we kind of helped these developers hone in on the story and the direction and the look and the aesthetic really helps. Not so much any example, but I think it's just the effect of having more people that are like-minded and whose brains are completely filled of 80s and 90s movies and TV references help out on things, and fellow creatives and stuff that you respect, I think really helps out in general.
Yeah, and I gotta say I can agree with you on all that. I understand your guys' personality. I'm an 80s kid, 90s kid, so I understand the references. I appreciate them. Iron Meat, played and reviewed that game. Absolutely loved it. And I did see the video about setting up the Angry Video Game Nerds backdrop and everything that you guys put into that. The measurements, like getting everything down perfect. And I was extremely impressed. I was like, that's awesome. That's something I would personally like to see in person one of these days.
Yeah, I worked during that time when I was, not making any money from YouTube, because you didn't back then. You just did it in that 2010 era. Like, I also worked at sign shops, and when I was out of NFL or moonlighted here or there at places, and I learned a lot about, vehicle wrap designs and printing and all that stuff that I still use to this day in our equipment here or otherwise. I try and design and print most of our signage or backdrops and things like that with Xander, our art director here. So, I've kind of made myself into a Swiss Army knife. What is it, like a jack of all trades, master of none, But I forgot what the rest of that quote is, but it's better than a master of none or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So I prefer, like, in me mentally, I don't know if it's ADHD or something else, but I need to jump from project to project to project to project and, spin 20 plates or ride a unicycle like you're saying. So I definitely prefer the wackiness. And I think that's kind of a problem for a lot of indies when they're so sucked into just one project for years and years and years. They start spinning their own wheels or working on the wrong thing or getting in their head or whatever, and then so many projects just pewter out. So I'm glad to work at a place that keeps a lot of the cats on the unicycles and stuff.
That's awesome. So you've worked on, of course, both films and games, which are like cousins in storytelling. What's one trick that you've learned from filmmaking that you've snuck into your game development process to make it more cinematic?
Yeah, I think to back up there, I think film and video games are the two genres of entertainment that pull from 20 different arts, from painting to sculpture to music to lighting to camera direction, cinematography. Both of those genres, you need 20 different types of people to, like, you do have some people that can do it one person things, but they're gleaning from so much other stuff. So it is cool that you could have with indie film or gaming, you can have a one-man band or you can have a AAA Hollywood studio working on both. But that's also why some of these budgets and how much the games cost is outrageous, but that's a whole other problem. But I think in terms of like a trick I've used to bring one to the other is pre-production is everything, and having your game design document and having your your lookbook and how you want it to look, and making sure that's completely laid out properly in your whatever you want to use, your Trello, your Notion, your Google Docs, your white, we have tons of whiteboards of just info here. I think it's really, really important to nail what you're trying to do and make sure you can convey that to other people, or the project just won't get other ground, and you'll spend so much time in production you'll never get to post-production. So that's one trick, is just never put the cart before the horse. You need a nice strong horse.
That makes sense. Yeah, you gotta have that foundation first before you can start running.
Yeah.
So, Screenwave Media is known for publishing unique indie titles. Are there any upcoming games or projects that you're personally itching to talk about, even if it's just a sneaky hint?
Yeah, I will say that the Screenwave Games brand turned into Retroware, even though we were involved, because Retroware's original, it started out as a website where a lot of creators like Game Chasers, Lazy Game Review, stuff like that, started out on Game Historian before YouTube, and then it merged. We always worked a little bit on the back end of it, the website, and then they eventually wanted to turn it into something else, and now it is a game studio, which I think works for the name because we make modern retro titles.
Yeah.
And I think now that we have our core, I'd like to call our, I think we dabbled in stuff like when we started with Use Your Words, and we kind of got the AVGN games, all the rights and that stuff into the right place, and made the 1 and 2 deluxe, the remaster with the 3rd chapter, which was pretty cool. But in terms of our core game and when we kind of started as a studio, I would say it was Prison City and then Iron Meat, which is a really good, strong foundation of these NES, SNES style games, which then gets you into what else do we have coming out? Like
I know one I'm looking forward to.
Oh, which one?
The Transylvania Adventure, Simon Quest.
The Transylvania Adventure Simon Quest is done by Programmancer, who's a very, very big one-man band, except for some art and some different type of things, some various ideas. He also did Prison City. And basically, that one is definitely coming out, and that one is very fun to play. It definitely has that vibe. I guess something that we kind of do with, if they won't make them, we will, kind of a
Yeah.
thing. So
That's what I thought.
We're slowly going through what we loved as kids and then getting them remade or finding someone who's already making it and then helping them get it over the finish line. Like Iron Meat is pretty much Contra 3. But if you play Contra 3 now and then you play Iron Meat, you're like, wow, Iron Meat's just a better game. And not to throw shade on a gem like Contra 3, but like so much has happened with controls and more that you can do in Unity than you can on, SNES actual original hardware. We're kind of bringing you those retro experiences with the modern conveniences that you need nowadays, especially on modern consoles and the different sizes and all that. But, same thing with something like Transylvania Adventure Simon Quest, where even though the character's name Simon Quest, last name Quest, and it's a huge parody / homage of Castlevania 2, it plays more like Zelda 2, and you're doing these different town missions and going from boss to boss, and Program Master took the love of both of those games and kind of mixed them together and put a whole new spin on it in a new IP, which, considering I think Iron Meat did better in the world than the new Contra Operation Galuga somehow, that I think you don't have to ride on IP sometimes, and if you make something cool and people dig it, just do it that way, because clearly Konami and Capcom are not going to do that. No. So and these big companies at Sunsoft, these people that we loved growing up on the NES and SNES, but then we have Neon Inferno coming out as well, the gallery shooter, which is a lot like Wild Guns for the SNES. So
right, great game.
It's more cyberpunk. And I'm missing Toxic Crusaders, of course, another Konami classic that we're ripping off. And we have some artists that worked on the new Turtles games on there, and that's gonna be a really, really fun one. So those 4 upcoming titles with Simon Quest, the new AVGN game, which is for actual NES hardware, including a modern version with modern cutscenes. Not to sidetrack and self-promote a little, but we're making all these games that are at the same time. When all your games are coming out 1 month from each other, bing bang boom boom boom. It gets a little confusing as the head of marketing, but
absolutely.
But in terms of what you're talking about, like other games or projects, sneaky hints, things like that. There are a couple IPs we're looking at, even though we don't think we need to do an IP. Of course, if someone came to us and be like, hey, we want to make like a Sonic Mania style thing for this game, or we want to reboot this, or we want to, and we have those upper level conversations with some of these bigger brands and stuff, because some of them do want to get into the retro thing. Then we have to decide, would we rather do something ourselves, or would we want to do an IP thing? But we have a couple brewing, and we have a couple other ideas coming together from games that we like growing up and things, because in terms of, we have our Mega Man Shatterhand style game, we have our Contra now, we have our Konami beat 'em up, our Turtles, we have our Castlevania game, so how do we get our Metroid, how do we get our Zelda, how do we get our Mario, how do we get our Sonic? Those are some of the things we go through. How could we possibly turn different things into other things? So and also by keeping it original and trying to like make something cool, like what would this look like back then, rather than just homage and parody stuff and get all the inspiration from other things. But yeah, I guess sneaky hints. My goal is to do as many 80s and 90s action things as possible.
Nice.
We were talking about a Terminator thing until the T2 game just got launched and announced. So we were like, well, that one's off the list. So keep it in that vein. That's what we're looking to do.
That's awesome. That's really good to hear. As a fan, I've always just assumed from afar that was kind of the game plan, that you guys were going out and making all of the games that you enjoyed growing up, that the companies that own the IPs, they're not making them. They're not making them anymore, like the Contras, the Castlevanias, as much as we want them. They're not pumping them out anymore. They're just giving us the anniversary collections for the most part.
Yeah, you're getting anniversary, which is really cool, and I love the limited run stuff, and you're getting this cool, totally cool, and you can finally play them on modern, and there's some gatekeeping involved with, different things like what's actually on the Switch or the download page, or what can you get physically or everything. So it is cool that they're, especially games that are so expensive, like if you're trying to get a complete Dracula X or Bloodlines or any of that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm very happy that they are putting those things out, but it does suck that they're not concentrating on some new style games, which is how you get games like Bloodstained and Curse of the Moon and things like that as well.
Yeah. Excellent.
Or in terms of indie creates, like also stuff like Blaster Master Zero and things like that. But would that game have done well if it wasn't called Blaster Master and it was just a different IP? But it had some of the, you can't really copyright gameplay kind of stuff like that. So what would it have been like without that? But so we kind of weigh those questions in our head sometimes.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm personally looking forward to all of the games that you guys have coming out. And again, with Transylvania Adventure of Simon Quest, awesome. You're taking two games, in my opinion, that were underappreciated with Simon's Quest and Zelda 2, still are, and it's combining both of those. So I'm personally very excited. I didn't know about the Zelda 2 inspiration as well, so can't wait for all the games though.
I think it wears that inspiration on its sleeve, and considering it's also packed with like mini games and things to break it up, in a really good soundtrack and really fun gameplay and upgrade system and other things. Because one of our big things at Retro 2 is, especially if a game takes off, we just released a huge DLC pack that was free for Iron Meat, with modulators and things to do after you beat the game, and our goal is to do that for pretty much all our future titles, if we can keep our devs moving. We try and make sure our people have fun and don't crunch, and hey, what's the next thing we want to try and work on and stuff like that. So we have some really cool ideas for Toxic Crusaders. Hopefully that does well. Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Well, I'll be there day one for Toxic Crusaders. Was hyped from the moment that got announced. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, we haven't told too many people because I know it's been pushed back several times. A lot of that has to do with the movie and some cross-marketing of the new movie that's coming out, and us refining gameplay, and we added the Marvel vs. Capcom switch-in system to a beat-em-up, which I don't think has really been done too many times, if at all. So we're kind of refining a lot of what that game is, and it gave us a lot of time to do that. I will reveal that there will be some big news at San Diego Comic-Con, because there's a lot of Toxie panels. This is the year of Toxie, with the new comic series, the new movies, the new all that, and Troma's doing a lot too. So we will reveal some big stuff at Comic-Con in San Diego, so that'll be fun.
Awesome. I will have that on my calendar to make sure I watch that.
Great.
So your background in 3D animation, it must come in handy for game design. Have you ever had a eureka moment where an animation idea completely transformed a game that you were working on?
So even though I have a degree in 3D animation, well, I have a dual degree with a film one too. Not that it matters, but because I had enough credits from doing whatever. 3D has never really been my strong point, and I've always really liked animation more from a respect and a fan angle than doing it myself. But as a creative director type, whatever, you have to understand what you're looking at to make judgment calls and things, even if you don't do it too often yourself. But I think for the 3D kind of stuff, in terms of a eureka moment, I don't think I've really had. I think yes. I think in terms of fundamentals, we used to say in college, there's no, and it probably came from some book or whatever. There's no animation without exaggeration, and I think sometimes people want to animate right to references where it'll end up looking like rotoscoping instead of being like this bouncy proper animation. And I think a lot of modern people who just learn Blender from YouTube videos and things like that kind of miss out on why doing things like smear takes in 2D or squash and stretch and all these fundamental things just aren't really utilized, and that's why some of these different games don't look right or they don't feel right. And even some major AAA games suffer from not exaggerating their animation, like when you're picking something up and you're not shaking or you're not feeling the weight under it, or it just feels a little if it's so realistic, it feels lifeless. If that makes sense.
Sterile. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think anyone should learn to just like really go over the top with some of this stuff and really expand on your delayed action and things like that in terms of 3D stuff. But it's crazy for me learning. I was trained on Softimage XSI software, which is what used and made Half-Life 2. And they got bought and merged into Autodesk, which is Maya. But now everyone seems to just using free software, or they're using a Blender or whatever they can get their hands on. The industry standard kind of went out the window, 3ds Max and all that stuff. So, but it doesn't really matter. As long as you know your principles and all that stuff, it doesn't matter what version you use, including things like Unity or Unreal Engine or things like that. Those very basic and soft skills and fundamentals is kind of a dying art, sadly.
Yeah. It's an awesome insight. So if you could pitch your dream indie game to a room full of investors with no budget limits, what kind of wild, out-of-the-box concept would you throw at them?
I don't know about wild. I'd love to make that ultimate 80s, 90s action movie game where you can, like Mortal Kombat does a little bit where, like, you can finally play as, like, RoboCop versus Terminator or things like that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that kind of angle in more of a 2D game. What would those ultimate things back if IP rights aren't an issue, which they super are. Ugh.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on that. And as a fan of that stuff, I'd love to do any RoboCop game. I was so jealous when they made the one that was like the new Terminator game. The Rogue City's really good.
Yes.
But something 2D like that, if we could ever get our hands on doing a 2D RoboCop game, I would love that, because that was, I saw that movie in theaters when I was 3. Which is probably a bad parent thing, but
great movie though.
Yeah, still a big fan on that. I love, and there's stuff that I love that, my room's a testament to junk that I have, and
Yeah.
if I could do a Star Trek thing, I would, but Paramount's, you see what I'm saying, like.
Yes.
But in terms of what I would want to do, like wild, like gameplay stuff, not really sure, because the budgets or any of that stuff in terms of being wild or that couldn't be done, like there is no limits to that stuff, because it's all done in engine and with small teams and stuff, like so I would focus on just doing some cool IP stuff and making things that I really wanted back then that I didn't get.
That's cool. I feel like you guys are already kind of doing that anyways with the games you're creating right now, minus the IP, right?
Yeah, because it's kind of like and I'm sure we could bolt on an IP to some of these things, and we've talked about some things like that as well. Because now that we have these engines and we have these devs and we have these artists and we have these ideas and we have these relationships, we could, or even pick up any of the IPs that are public domain now. Between us, or I guess the world, we talked about, hey, what could we do with a Popeye thing? Like a rubber noodle Cuphead fighter. Like what could we do? And then you're missing these characters because they don't exist in it. They're still under management. So what could you do with a Steamboat Willie? Not that you're going to, like what's coming up the next few years. Let's try this or that, or would it matter at all? Or so we kind of think about it a lot, but I know IP isn't the main thing, and for some companies it is, but I also see how that works out on the back end when they, after so much time, the percentages flip, or it hurts their team in the long run, or it's short gain, or the IP didn't do well. And I don't like throwing my other devs and my other friends under the bus or anything, but there's been a few big IP games that came out in the last couple of years that didn't break 50 Steam reviews, and it's really sad and it's tough. So you kind of have to be smart about it too. But I think a lot of that comes into passion, not just we just get IP and do something with it.
Right. Yeah, I think you guys have done a really good job as far as the IPs are concerned, about not having to have the IPs, but it feels like the IP, but at the same time, its own unique game.
and you have stuff like Toxic Crusaders, but that comes from a super indie company and is like kind of a one season forgotten. It's not like we made a Turtles game or Captain Planet. Even Captain Planet like isn't that big of an IP. So we'll see. Yeah.
Well, that this kind of all leads into the next question, right? And so your guys' content often celebrates retro gaming with a modern twist, as we've talked about. So what is one retro game that you'd love to remake or sequelize, and how would you sprinkle your signature Silverman style on it?
Oh, so like remake an IP that a game that already exists and make like a 2 or a 3 that never happened or something like that?
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean they did a really good job with something like Sonic Mania and really getting that inspiration and things like that. I would love some more 2D Mario games that bridge off of 3 rather than World or off of New Super Mario Brothers and stuff, because I'm like still like 1 and 3 are still my favorite of the entire series. That was like a huge thing. I mean 2's fine too. It brought a lot of good characters into it and stuff, but I'd love to make one of those, but I don't know. It's kind of and that's kind of the problem we have now. Like, in terms of that. Tony Stark built this in a cave with a bunch of scraps type of mentality when, like ABGN 8-bit, when you're trying to make these games and it's even on retro hardware, let alone modern hardware, and you can't match a style or gameplay quality as people 40 years ago on, the oldest making stuff on Apple IIs. It's kind of crazy the amount of skill and dedication that and workarounds that happened back then that actually worked out. Sure, there's a lot of things on the cutting room floor and you never saw or failed or whatever, but anything back then, a lot of those IPs still exist, or powerhouses like your Mario franchise or whatever. I've also noticed I said Mario and Mario separately the whole time, but that's whatever. You know what I want to make? I want to make a game, like Street Fighter the movie, the game.
Yes.
Where they actually scan the actors after the movie and did the thing. And I know they have a good arcade of it at Barcade in LA, so I got to visit that and play that when I was out there.
Oh, awesome.
And I think that's for the Saturn PlayStation. It's something.
Yep.
But I'd love to do the 1993 Mario movie as a game. 16-bit game, and I think that would have been awesome.
That'd be epic.
So put that one in there for me, which I don't think that you could ever get the rights for that. And if it was a fan game, you get shot from orbit. But I love that movie. And I wonder if you could do the movie as a game and you break off the IP and you just call it Dino Hatton like it was supposed to be. See, now you got me thinking. Like, now you could do that. You could have your Mario game about and make it like that. Because the Mario stuff in that is the least interesting part of that movie. So, See, now you got
I'd
me
love
thinking.
to see that.
Everyone watching, you've just signed an NDA, a friend DA with me. Do not make that game for me. I will push Dino Hatton forward and sprinkle in the Mario Brothers 1993 movie.
I'm a huge fan of that movie. Honestly, I know a lot of people aren't. When it went up for sale on 4K, I got the nice box set.
Yeah,
there's
me too, yep.
250 of them. It says, 0 out of 250. I don't know which one I have, but I'm a very proud owner of that. I love the movie. So, man.
Wasn't that put out by the Australian company? Who was it? So I got one of those. And just to the Vinegar Syndrome stuff, like I get a lot of that. Like I can't really see, but I have like a whole let's see, I have a Mac and Me collection complete.
Oh, yeah.
Steven Seagal, Star Trek, Freddy Got Fingered.
Awesome.
I would turn any of this stuff into games, even doesn't deserve it. Like I just like wonky stuff.
One IP that I always wished, I've brought this up before, I would have loved to have seen it from the 80s. Would have been a great video game. Short Circuit.
Oh.
A game with Johnny Five.
Yeah, that would be pretty good. I'm surprised that didn't happen, honestly, considering how many R-rated things became games, let alone a movie that, well, the first one's not really for kids if you watch it again, but the second one is, especially with the song, the holding up for the hero at the end.
Yes.
Way to
so
steal
good.
Shrek 2. Yeah, like that would be a cool one. Like, it's kind of funny when you're making games that only you care about, and then you're like, oh wait, more people do care about this. Not enough to make it, but enough would be interested if someone else did. So yeah, there's a lot of weird IPs I'd love to do. Like I always talked about a Star Trek beat 'em up or tournament fighter.
That'd be amazing.
All the characters and stuff. And I'm also like a big theme park guy too, and Disney and all that stuff. So old Epcot, I really, really like. So I should make a cubby for that actually.
I take it you have that game on NES.
What, the
Disney Magical Adventure by Capcom?
Yeah, that one's pretty good. And even like the dumb one, like the PlayStation one where you're racing as all the characters and stuff through all the Magic Kingdom and the Epcot and whatever. Like,
yeah,
those are always, I like off-branded stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a Disney adult, but I definitely respect from close enough.
Yeah, same here. Especially their stuff from like the 80s, early 90s. I appreciate a lot.
Yep. Yeah. So when I go down to Disney, I try and do the stuff where I. Like I just went to Land and I did like the Roger Rabbit and stuff that like is still around that I actually care about, not like a lot of the new IP stuff. Like I'm like, go to California Adventure, I'm good. I don't need to see Avengers and Cars and the ruination of Tower of Terror and all this stuff. Like, I love Incredibles and stuff, but I don't really need to go to Pixar Pier, So I definitely kept it old school, and I really, really like that vintage stuff. So
same here, man. I'm the same way. I'd be at Toontown.
Yeah. I was doing that stuff, but so I guess in terms of sprinkling my signature style on it for a twist or whatever, I would do the Mario 93 movie as a game. And that would have been so cool if they got like the actors drunkenly like on green screen and like cut them out frame by frame, like your Mortal Kombat pixelization style. I know they've done that for a few other games, and some were never released. But that would have been a funny one.
Yeah, that would have been awesome, man. I wish that would have came out. That's for sure.
And I know we're gonna get there, but eventually I can go to like the AI prompt and type in, "Give me I want this as a movie game. Give me show me what it looks like," and it'll spit it out, and I'll be happy. But also dead inside because no one human made that. But
exactly.
But I do like the concept.
All right, so this is our last question here, and we got to know what's next for Justin Silverman. Are you cooking up something new in the gaming or film world that's going to blow our minds, or maybe a totally unexpected side project that we'll never see coming, like a 93 Mario movie?
Well, that would be great. Dino Hatton. I'm helping... I helped out Cinemassacre with some cool stuff yesterday that's coming up. I'll swing by and help James and those guys every now and again, aside from helping them with like merch and the games and stuff. Too Many Games is in a couple weeks. I'm not sure when this comes out compared to that, at the end of June. And we are doing... we're actually doing a indie game showcase, and that's been around for 15 years, but this is the first year it's getting an actual live stream with host, including myself and Celia B., who's the marketing director at Yacht Club Games, Shovel Knight, and all that. So that'll be a cool show. I've never put on a live show like that, so I think that'll be a lot of fun, and will be good to have as many indie type things as possible, and Steam events and all that, because it's the only way people get to know about these games and wish lists.
Exactly.
So the stuff that you guys do and we guys do on both sides of it is pretty cool. So doing that, and then I'm looking to do sequels to some of our bigger titles. I'd love to do an Iron Meat 2. We'll see if it happens, but we have some other ideas. We have some IP things that might come down the pike, and some DLC for things that we hope do well, like Toxic Crusaders and things. So I think we kind of have a good blueprint, and from marketing to how we do things and all that, and becoming this name in the modern retro gaming scene, because there's only so many people that do that.
Yeah.
And also working closer with people like Limited Run and things like oh my god, what is announced? Neon Inferno is with them, and the new ABGN game. And I was just at MegaCat, where they're actually going to assemble and make and solder everything in the United States. Thank God.
Great.
So the games work. especially when the AVGN name is attached to your property. And we came up with some really cool ideas as well for cartridges and pack-ins and all that stuff. As a big fan of the show and someone that produced it for many years as well, so we're doing a lot of big little things coming up. I wouldn't say anything groundbreaking unless we can get a couple things that might happen, but we're in an industry where we're planning our 2027 and 2028, let alone next year. So that's kind of what's going on now. So just stay tuned. In terms of like a Papa John's, like stay tuned.
Yes.
Threat. And we're doing Too Many Games things in a few weeks, and you'll see me on screen if you tune into that. And definitely check out. I'm very excited for what you guys are doing in your show too. I don't call people and talk to them usually, so I'm glad you guys do that.
Yeah, we appreciate it. It's been great talking with you, and I feel like I've learned a lot just from talking with you today, and I'm excited to see the Too Many Games as well and see the Indie Game Showcase. I know, like with the Yacht Club, I've been, eagerly anticipating Mina the Hollower, so I'm excited to
and
get
that's
an
the
update.
thing with them too, that people, they kind of realize, but that's like a really amped up version of Link to the Past, I would say. And Shovel Knight is DuckTales.
Exactly, one of my favorites.
Bump it up and down. So, even though that seems like an IP, considering it was a Nintendo game that eventually got its own amiibo, which is crazy for a third party, and kind of started the indie game super trend 10 years ago, aside from Super Meat Boy and things like that. I Want to Be the Guy, all those type of games back in the day. You can make a game that feels like DuckTales or that had good mechanics, because you can't copyright them, and make it feel like an own thing. And so much time has passed where people go, oh yeah, that original game, Shovel Knight, and it's like, well, yes, but, and that's kind of what we're trying to do as well, but for way more of the retro games.
Yeah, I think you guys are nailing it. So I'll be watching everything. I keep tabs on everything you guys do on social media. I'm always interested to see what's coming next, and
appreciate it.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time today, and I'll see you at the next event.
Yeah, you got it.